It is really fucking amazing to, well, I guess the first presentation at the first in-person Nerd Night in 2.5 years. If we haven't met, I'm Lewis. I used to run, one of the organizers of Nerd Night. Sorry, I'm like seeing Twitch happen behind me. So seeing yourself is a real trip. So yeah, I helped run the show for 9 years. I haven't given a presentation on stage since 2009 when I talked about shark sex, and it opened with a presentation about, with an interpretive dance about sharks. So I will always continue to exploit my friends' talents. Thank you again, Laughing Boy. So I'm here to talk about bluebonnets. So my talk is Life in Hellstrip, my journey in ecological restoration. And if anyone gets the cartoon at the bottom, then you win a lot of points on the Sleestak curve. And if you get that, then you win a lot of points on the Sleestak curve. It's nice. Go? Yeah. So yeah, this is a really important talk to me. This is something I'm really passionate about, but I've never given a public presentation before about ecological restoration. So I'm kind of treating this as an intro to the concept, share some projects that are really important to me, share some of my own projects, and share a couple things that you can take out of this, including I brought a plant to give away and a bunch of wildflower seeds. There's no condition, just come get them. I thought about doing a quiz, but I'm not that prepared. Next slide. So why you should care about this. This is one thing whenever we would ask someone to give a Nerd Night talk, is remind people who the hell you are and why they should care. I am not the world's foremost expert on this subject. I am an enthusiast, and I think it's really important to, and one of the great things about Nerd Night is creating a platform for enthusiasts to share their interests. So when you see like, I could do as good as that guy did, maybe you'll sign up to give a talk too, and we'll open up some topics that we wouldn't have seen. I am a biologist. I'm not working in the laboratory. I'm a financial planner now. I've been involved in many projects, and I am on the board of directors of Circle Acres, an ecology action project that I'll talk about more in a second. So ecological restoration is different than what we often think of as conservation, which is protecting wildlife and places that are there. Restoration is about putting back what is missing, what was damaged by us. And it can be restoring, like Circle Acres, like restoring a site from scratch that has been completely denuded, restoring missing species, or restoring conditions that animals and the climate provide. So this one over here on the right is a forest where they started fencing it off and keeping invasive grazers out, and the forest was able to return. This is a really famous example bringing wolves back to Yellowstone. And one of my favorites, yeah, thanks for whoever wooed for the wolves. Beavers are ecosystem engineers, and they're missing from a lot of their native range, and they've actually moved back into Austin on their own. There are beavers in Austin, but you cannot Google beavers Austin and find them. But there are active projects around the world to reintroduce beavers because they're so important for the environment. So why should you care about it? It is the UN Decade of Ecological Restoration. Something that restoration practitioners often promote is ecological services, the things that the environment does for us, like flood mitigation. Like the more plant coverage there is, the more the soil absorbs and slows down rain. That provides predators that eat pest insects. It provides pollinators that pollinate our crops. I really don't give a shit about that. I only care about, I mean, they're good. I like flood prevention, but it's a very human-centric perspective. And the reason I do it, one of them is to give carbon somewhere to go. If you see this here, this is, I believe, little blue stem. The roots are as long as this guy who is within median height next to crops that have roots that just go a few inches into the soil. The intact ecosystems are the best way to get carbon back into the ground. We've been digging it up for the last few centuries, and we need to make places for it to go. It also provides habitat that's missing, that has been destroyed by us. And I think it's really important to see that this is a way that one person can have a really big impact. In an era where people might feel powerless and that things are out of control, you can at least control this one thing and make a difference for a butterfly. And I also think there's just an immoral imperative. We caused the damage. It's up to us to fix it, and we should put as much effort and ingenuity into fixing it as we put into destroying it. Next slide, please. Yeah, thank you. Well, then I'm done. This is a picture from Circle Acres where I volunteer over the last century. It's off of Montopolis, just south of Roy G. Guerrero on Grove Boulevard. It's a 10-acre preserve that is owned and operated by Ecology Action of Texas, used to run the recycling center downtown. And over the last century, it was a farm, then a quarry, like trucks came and literally scraped up the ground and took it away, and then it was a legal and illegal dump for decades. East Austin Drive, the drive that was torn up to segregate Austin, was dumped there. And a anarchist group called Rhizome Collective took it upon themselves to start cleaning it up. It had just been a neglected space for the last 100 years, and they just started cleaning it up. They removed hundreds of tons of recyclable materials. They got the EPA to remove toxic waste, and they clay capped it. This has only been 15 years since it's been running. Ecology Action has since taken over from the anarchist group. And the person that ran it is now our land manager. And it's one of the most biodiverse places in Austin. If you use iNaturalist, the most species in the city are found in what used to be a dump. And I think it's really inspiring to see, like, if the most neglected land can be healed, it says something for the planet. This is the intro. Thanks, y'all. Next slide, please. Amy, next. Oh. I moved this up. This was originally the closer, but it is Indigenous Peoples Day. And I want to give a shout out because working with Indigenous peoples has really changed my perspective on ecological restoration. For me, it used to be about trying to get the most species, trying to get the most bugs, like what things were returning, like could we get a bison someday? And then once we started reaching out to Indigenous people in their diaspora in Austin and inviting them out to take ownership of the space. Several are now on the board and use the space for ceremony. It's shown me something that I knew but didn't really appreciate, that it's a human planet. There is a perspective that we're the problem and the answer is for us to go away, to sequester us in cities or shoot us out into space or something. But what we need to do, what I've learned is they live on the land differently. They often refer to themselves as people of the land, and we need to change our relationship. What I'm calling ecological restoration was just how they live, and we can change our relationship with the land. Next. So this is my epiphany that got me working on this. When I was an undergraduate at A&M back in the early 2000s, I noticed that the forests around College Station are very squat. And I asked a professor friend, mentor, what was up with that, and I couldn't find, like, you look up squat trees, you can't really find anything, so just a bonsai. And he said that the reason for that was that the area around College Station is historically prairie land. And because colonists stopped fires from burning, woody plants and trees were able to grow and turn it into forest. And so it's just a very young forest. And that was kind of my first time in my little 19-year-old brain where I realized, like, something as simple as that can change the entire ecosystem. Next slide. And then I learned about this man, Jadef Payang. He is known as Forest Man. There's a documentary about them. And he saved his island that he lives on. It's an island in a river in India. And he read that it was going to be gone due to erosion within 20 years. And so he just took it upon himself to start planting trees. He's a farmer, and at the end of the day, he would go out with a backpack full of trees and start planting trees. This was in 1979, and now there's a forest there. It's full of elephants and lions and rhinoceros. I should say, don't say bears, don't say bears, don't say bears. Lions and rhinoceros and elephants. And like the local authorities came out and they're like, where the hell did this forest come from? And it was this guy. He saved, because he called them, because poachers were coming. And so he called for help, and they're like, where the hell did this forest come from? So this is just an example. One guy decided, and he saved his island, and it means the world to all the things that live there. Next slide. This one's another one that I just really like. This is Tim Wong. He's a biologist in San Francisco, and he kind of single-handedly brought the California pipevine swallowtail butterfly back to San Francisco. It's not endangered outside of San Francisco, but it was missing from inside the city, and it was because the pipevine plants that it grows on were gone. And so he started filling his backyard with pipevine. He started giving pipevine to people and started bringing larvae from the country into San Francisco. And now there are populations of California pipevine swallowtail because this guy built a little hut in his backyard and started filling it with butterflies. So he might not save the world, but it certainly made the world to these animals. Next slide. Here's just just to show kind of the diversity of activities in ecological restoration. The Coral Restoration Foundation, which is rebuilding degraded reefs off of the Florida Keys, the Usual Redwoods, and is part of a network around the world that's restoring reefs. Usual Redwoods, which is replanting redwood forests in Northern California, the Pedregal in Mexico City, which is a lava habitat that's really important for recharging the aquifers in one of the largest cities on the planet, and Kaho'olawe, which is an island off of Hawaii that was used as a bombing range by the US military during World War II. And Native Hawaiians have started restoring it, and I think yet another example of if we can restore this little island, we can restore our planet. And before I say next slide, I'm also pointing this out because my friend John in the audience once called me out in a very nice way because I was talking about all these things and wanting to go visit them and build a network, and he's like, dude, you have a lawn full of Bermuda grass. You need to work on your yard first. And that's what we're actually here to talk about. Next slide. So this is the Hellstrip prairie for which the title is named. It's one of my prairies at my house. It was coined that by John because it is one of the worst places to be a plant. It's between the street, the sidewalk. It's ripping hot. It gets trampled on by kids and dogs and stuff. And yet it's probably the most successful restoration I've done. And we did it drunkenly in the middle of the night. John, we'd had a few too many beers, and we're like, let's get some shovels. and it turned out to be one of the best ones. It's incredibly dense, incredibly biodiverse, and it's really awesome because I find kids out there I find people putting their babies in and taking very carefully curated photos in the bluebonnets. It's that's my driveway, but you're making it look. So if you could go do a swipe on the. Let's see, I'm going to pull up a little movie real quick. Yeah. So this is a quick tour. I'm really bad at taking photos of this is really hard, so I'm using video. So this is my backyard. That's a buffalo grass and blue grama lawn that I've got going. What are you trying to do? Okay. Yeah. So my backyard is now dominated by tall grasses. This is a little experiment that I've got going that I'll talk about more in a little bit. And notice how thick and dense this is. It's going to be relevant in a sec. This is a little blackland prairie strip that making it longer by trying to be faster. On the side yard, I used to have a project called Side Yards Weil, trying to like make neglected places, and then leads up to the Hellstrip. This is a few weeks ago. It's full of standing cypress. It was full of bluebonnets, fire wheel. It's absolutely incredible, and just shows that like I kind of have the attitude like if a place can be made to be natural, it should be, and this is a good place to use it. I'm doxing myself, and yeah, that's the end of the Hellstrip. So the Hellstrip Prairie is trying to recreate an ecosystem, an ecotope called the Blackland Prairie, which is a grassland that's part of the network of the Great Plains that stretches from Canada down through Texas into Mexico. And Austin is a unique place. Texas has a lot of ecoregions. A lot of stuff kind of collides here in the middle of the continent. And in Austin, Cross Timber Prairies, Edwards Plateau, and Blackland Prairie all collide here in the city. So if you are east of Mopac, you're very likely in Blackland Prairie. And if you're west, you're in either Timbers or Edwards Plateau, which is why the terrain and plant life in Austin changes depending on what part of the city you're in. And the Blackland Prairie is one of the most endangered ecosystems on the planet. Less than 1% of it still exists. People don't realize that we are living in Blackland Prairie because most of it's destroyed, because it's, by its very nature, over the millennia of burning and deep-rooted plants, is really rich soil, and it's all been turned into farmland. But on the upside of that is, with so little left, even putting back a little bit makes it 1.1%. Could I go to the next? When you start out doing work with wildflowers, you think, well, they're wildflowers. They just do their thing, and you like toss some seeds out, and then nothing happens. And I'm going to give you all some seeds, and nothing's going to happen. But it's a nice touch. What I've learned over the years is when I try to do a restoration, inevitably there'll be a heavy rain, so I should probably do one soon and just wash away all my seeds, or it'll get, yeah, they're not cheap. Or they're free or they're very expensive. Or they dry out because it's too hot too soon or too late. They get smothered by invasives because you didn't do a good job doing site prep. And most of all, motherfucking squirrels. I hate that it's like turned me into like a character of an old man fighting a squirrel, but I swear they just take pleasure in it. I've watched them like in a grid pattern dig up every one of my sprouts in like a 200 square foot bed. They didn't eat it. They didn't like take it back to their nest. It was just out of spite. They're just having fun. So dealing with squirrels, accepting that they are part of the ecosystem, and hoping to attract predators is the goal. Next slide. So this is how it's typically how a large-scale restoration would be done. You would put down opaque plastic, solarize the ground, basically cook it for a year to sterilize it, because what you're trying to do is prevent invasives from taking over before you're able to put in your target species. Often it's followed by the application of herbicides, and then after a year you finally plant something. Most people aren't going to put up with this, and I'm way too lazy and impatient to do this. So I have been working on developing a method that is for lazy people that has a high rate of success. So this is about laying down a prairie pocket. It's a little bit of a play on Polly Pocket, and that small prairies are often called pocket prairies. And so what I've done is made these little pockets out of biodegradable fabric that I glue the corners together and then cover with a mesh. The fabric prevents invasives from coming up and smothers them over time and allows roots from the sprouts to go down, and you use source soil, use topsoil for that, so that when you plant it, you know that all the things coming up from it are the things you meant to grow. And then the mesh is there to stop squirrels. It doesn't stop them, it slows them down. But it's been helpful, but I have watched them sit there chewing away at the grid, and then they get bored. So if we could go to the next one. Oh, sorry, this is, it's fine. It's at my friend, other John's house, a different British John that I did it with. So this is how the pocket prairies are assembled. I think of it as like a tart, but with dirt instead of cream. And I use muslin because it biodegrades, it's relatively cheap, and it has a tight enough weave that stuff can't come up through it, but the roots can go down through it. So this is in my kitchen, gluing them together into these pockets. And if I could go down to the next one, here's the series of events in other John's backyard, leveling the site so that the soil doesn't wash away, putting down the pockets, filling them with soil, applying the seeds, which are the same seeds that I brought tonight, and I can talk more about my mixes later, covering them, and then watering them. Native plants don't need no maintenance, but they need very little maintenance. Once they're established, they're pretty good. I can talk about in the Q&A if anyone wants to know. But yeah, so I was able to put this in his yard and walk away, and he was able to take care of it and get that starter prairie that he's got going. If I go to the next slide. In science, it's important to share your failures. So I want to talk about some things that I've tried that did not work. Thank you for the knowing nods from people who do science. So this is a way too elaborate system I made using a very expensive dosing pump from a reef tank to drip water onto these coconut fibers that I would lay out. And it worked kind of, but they needed a lot of water. There was a high mortality rate, and squirrels love tearing them up. I could not stake them. At first, I would just lay them down with some dirt, and then I noticed the squirrels were coming and pulling them away. And then I started staking them, and I noticed that they were tearing them up. And I just staked the entire thing, and they would just come in and strip by strip take it up. So it's important to try things, but that didn't work out very well. Next. In small restorations, it's really smart to use plants. I'm kind of an idiot, and I like using seeds because I like to think it comes up where it wants. But it's your yard. It's fine to just make plants and put them in the ground wherever you want. So I've started doing that. This was a little bit overkill. Native seeds don't sprout the same way cultivated seeds do. If you did this with tomatoes, 100% of them would sprout. This is 10% of them would sprout. Way too much effort. This was buffalo gourd that I ended up giving away to people at the preserve. It works, but it's more trouble than it's worth. But it is how I made, in the next slide, you'll see, get that, yeah. So I switched over to this system that's just a tray sitting in water. There's hundreds of different cells. I made a little log book of what was in what cell. And my goal was to get echinacea, coneflower, which is a native flower. And I've been wanting it to show up for a decade, and I never got any. So I was like, fuck it, I'm going to make some. And I got one. And then dozens of others came up in the Hellstrip all on their own. So yes, a handful of things that I put out there worked, but also nature just does its thing just to mess with you. Next. This is John and Hazel's yard. They did a bit of a different approach. They try harder, and they're much more skilled gardeners than I am. They used a tool to scrape up the lawn and then flip it over to return the nutrients, but also smother invasives. And then they planted kind of the same mix, the blue grama and buffalo grass, and then a nice field of forbs and asters in the back. And importantly, a pond full of native plants, or native water plants. So I like my preserve. theirs is amazing and gets a lot of different wildlife. Having water brings a lot of wildlife to the yard. Right, I forgot to do this. So no joke, don't do this at home. I am a semi-trained professional. I have a certificate in being a private burn boss. I am allowed to, in the state of Texas, set fire to private property with people's permission. So I took a class, I went out and got certified, and these are my too cool to turn around and look at the fire, cowboy in the smoke photos to evidence that this is a real thing I did. And it's important because, as I mentioned, fire is a characteristic of grasslands. It is disturbance is a marker of grasslands. Burning returns nutrients to the soil, returns carbon to the soil, helps the soil hold water, and allows, some seeds require the chemicals in smoke in order to germinate. And so it being missing from the land has dramatically changed the ecosystem. And we've suppressed fire across the continent for the last few hundred years, and we're kind of dealing with the consequences today. And so, like I said, don't do this at home. If you want to do it at home, call me, and I'll come set your yard on fire. So at the most cautious version is cutting the hay in winter from the prairie, putting it in a fire pit, burning it, and then putting the ashes back out. And what I do most of the time, so that I don't get in trouble with the fire department, is use campfire rings and do a grid pattern, setting each little patch on fire until it's all gone. And this was from this winter, and this is the same place that was in the video that I showed that is now a verdant tallgrass prairie. And here is a little blue stem being burned inside the campfire ring. And I was like, I'm definitely killing this plant. No marshmallows. I'm on the job when I'm doing it. But yeah, that one came back very quickly, and it's also a lot of fun. Not gonna lie. I got featured in a Life with Fire podcast, the Good Fire calendar. I was very excited. I thought they were going to use my cool guy photo, but they used a picture of a bumper sticker that I took. But still, I'm in. It's on my CV. Next one. Next, please. One lesson to take home and life lesson that I've learned doing this over the last 20 years is that you're not in control. You can do your best, you can be careful, you can be attentive, but at the end of the day, there are outside forces that are outside of your control. This was just this last week, someone on Reddit, landscapers trimmed my plastic plant. I can't tell you how many times I found out people out there looking for my neighbor's Airbnb, just stomping on my flowers, looking at their phone. A number of times landscapers have very kindly cleared the weeds in my yard for me. They get dug up, they get, dogs come poop on them. And if you get too attached to anything, you're gonna get frustrated and give up. So all you can do is keep working on it, keep putting it out there, and know that even if it was out there for a little bit, it mattered to something at some point, even if it's just you. This is a bummer, but this is that echinacea that I put so much work into growing, someone plucked it. Fuck them. No. People don't know how to think about wildlife. They saw a pretty flower, they took it home. Hopefully they appreciate coneflower a little bit more. It's a perennial, it'll come back. I've got dozens of more. But it's definitely helped me in life and in restoration to realize that sometimes you just have to surrender and do your best. Next slide, please. My last point is what I want to get into next is green roofs. I thought that green roofs were kind of a stupid, self-indulgent rich people thing for a long time, and they kind of are. The more I've read about them, the more I get into them. They help extend the life of your roof. They help they provide insulation, so houses need less maintenance. They need less energy inputs. They provide habitat. And the thing that I really like about them is no one with a weed whacker is going to climb up on a ladder and go trim your bluebonnets for you. So I'm trying to like find my way into this, but it's letting people get up on your roof is a bit bigger of an ask than just giving them a packet of seeds. Next one. So what can you do? You can plant native plants. I have some seeds. I have this big blue stem for somebody. Big blue stem will get like 10 feet tall. It's a fucking amazing plant. Put it in your yard or do it guerrilla style somewhere. This is my friend Monica's patio. I gave her some seeds. She put them in cups and pots, and they flowered, and she got pollinators. You don't need a lot of land in order to make a difference. Leave your dead wood, leave your leaves. I rake mine over to this side of the yard. A lot of insects rely on dead wood and leaves as part of their life cycle. Doing this, I get way more fireflies now. Turn off your outdoor lights because it fucks with life cycles of a lot of animals and migrating birds. Don't mow. No, there's no mow May. Not a problem for me. I never fucking mow. That's the one nice thing is like my neighbors used to hate it, and now I'm the wildflower yard. And this is the one everyone hates, and I'm sorry, but leave your cat inside. Cats are... Cats, I have a cat. I love cats. They are invasive predators. They kill billions of birds and small animals every year for fun. It's hard enough out there being wildlife. Leave the cat inside. Next one. Here's a handful of resources. Seedsource.com, Native American Seed is like the place to go to for seeds. Blackland Collaborative is like the big people in town who do this kind of work. John Hart Asher heads that up. Lady Bird Johnson Wildflower Center is like the place. Garden 17 and Barton Springs, yeah. Garden 17 and Barton Springs Nursery are both good sources for seeds and sometimes have plants. I'll confess I haven't read this yet. It's on my reading list. Nature's Best Hope is apparently fantastic and a good introduction to ecological restoration. Go on. And this is me. You can find me in my name, lewisweil.net, lewisweil at proton.mail.com, or lewisweil on the social medias. Reach out to me. I'll bring you seeds or set your yard on fire or take you on a walk at Circle Acres. And I'm going to loop this footage of John and Hazel's yard with fireflies at dusk while we do Q&A if we've got time. What's that?
You did great.
Oh, thank you.
Okay, so just a reminder, we are Nerd Nite Austin on Twitter. If you want to Twitter a question, or tweet, as the kids say. If you want to just ask them with your face, then that's also acceptable. Just raise your hands, and before we get into the questions, I want to thank everybody for bearing with us tonight. Tonight was a living science experiment in a very real way because, like, as Lewis was talking, I was all like, turn off light bulbs by screen. Make sure that we have 2 microphones next time. Bleep, 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 bleep. So you're all living in my little experiment, and thank you for that. Next month will be smoother. But with that being said, we now have our first inaugural question for our first inaugural speaker in our new spot. What you got?
Have you read Under a White Sky by, I think it's Elizabeth Colte, but I could be saying that all wrong and I could be not remembering her name.
Okay, well, I would have put the kibosh on this because I don't want to have a book club conversation right now, but we can definitely, we're having intermission soon, and I think like that would be a good one. So with that being said, I would also like to, since it's been over 2 years, I want to remind you that the best Nerd Night questions are punchy. And and also questions. Lewis raises a good point. And I realized as I was handing off the microphone, you're a trustworthy person. I don't think I made a mistake, but boy, I could have. So let's just see how all this goes. Jacob, what's your question?
You might have addressed this already when I was fiddling with some knobs, but start of your journey to end of your journey right now, how long did it take you to like find your happy medium of like yard and what you were trying to do with it and experimenting and failing, and how long did that take?
2 microphones. Yeah, how long did it take? Like I said, I've been doing it for 20 years. My first restoration effort was outside the biology building at A&M. I sprinkled some region-appropriate seeds from Native American seed in the like little planted pot where the graduate students put out their cigarettes, and it was there for years. There was a little prairie on the stoop for years. I would say it's been in the last few years, the last couple years, where I've gotten somewhat good at it. Getting involved with Circle Acres has been really inspirational. And it's really just been, and honestly, like quarantine helped. Had time to work on it and spending a lot more time in my yard. But yeah, it's not like I was working in a focused way for 20 years, but I've been doing it on and off for 20 years. And it's only been in the last couple of years that I've really started to feel like I'm any good at it. Thank you.
I think we have time for maybe 1 or 2 more questions. So I'm going to go out this way, out into the bench frontier, if you will. Let's see how this goes. I want to give you the microphone, but don't act up. All right.
Hi, Lewis. What part of your native prairie has brought you the most joy, and why?
Are you thinking on that, or did you not hear it? Okay, just checking.
Which part of my prairie is bringing me most joy? Asked by some random British stranger who I've never met. Thank you, John. So that's a good question, right? So normally I would say the Hellstrips because they're just a lot of fun. They're very biodiverse. They're very public and out there. Right now, I have a patch that I just started of buffalo grass and some wildflower seeds, and new ones are always fun. So I'm going to say that one's the one that I like. Faff over the most. Yeah. Do you have any?
So I think that's it for now. So let's give Lewis a big hand. All right. Outstanding. Thank you, Lewis.